What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video on why I don't really use mods at all. Now, I do want to start this video off by just mentioning that this video is in no way a dig at mods or their existence. I think mods and the people who create them are honestly incredible. Modding and all of the community therein are largely responsible for the huge lifespans games would otherwise not see. And as, frankly, any gamer I imagine would agree, that's pretty much a win for everyone. That said, obviously, as the title would have told you, I don't really use them. And this comes down to a few different reasons. But if you're unaware and this is the first video of mine you're watching, I review a lot of games. I play a lot of older games as well, and that's most of what my channel is. Just reviews and guides of every game I enjoy and want to play. So a question, or a suggestion I should say, that I get pretty regularly, especially for older titles is, oh, here's a bunch of mods you should install for the better experience. And as you probably have realized, I don't really ever take that advice. So the first and most practical reason, as you probably already guessed, is the fact that I'm reviewing a game, and mods or anything that significantly changes the gameplay is going to have an effect on the review itself. And just because of the nature of that, I try to avoid using them as much as humanly possible. I will say that even with things like that, there are still exceptions. For instance, things like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. That is not a game that you want to play without the unofficial patch, just period. The fact that the unofficial patch is not just sold as a bundle with the base game is insane. Somebody should really just pay that mod author and roll that update into the base game. But broadly speaking, because of that, just as a reviewer, anything that's going to drastically alter the way that a game plays is going to affect the review, and so I usually just don't use them. But that argument, of course, leads into the, well, why not graphical mods for older games that just change things, etc. And the answer to that question is that I'm lazy. In terms of graphics, I don't really care much about that. I play a lot of CRPGs, top-down style stuff. So as you might imagine, the games that I enjoy the most have never been the most graphically impressive games that I've ever seen. So I think it's pretty safe to say that I am not the type of person who's super into the graphical fidelity of a title. So combine that large neutrality on graphics with the fact that installing all these graphics mods requires work on my end, and you got a situation where the benefit does not outweigh the con of the work, which on top of all of the other stuff that I have to do in a day, getting these videos ready, recording, etc., I just cannot find the time to download a bunch of mods that just don't do anything besides make something look slightly prettier when it's not that important to me to begin with. Now, while I think that covers pretty much the big ones, if you will, in terms of questions that I usually get or ideas people might have about it, there is one more thing I want to mention, and that is that sometimes if you are using mods on a game that is still regularly being updated, it tends to break the game. And for games I'm reviewing, at least, games that are still being updated, of course, that's a huge problem if I suddenly can't use a bunch of save files because of this, as something like that can cost me literally dozens of hours of work. A prime example of this being something like Wrath of the Righteous. Almost every update that comes out for that title, which is still being regularly updated, breaks every mod associated with it. At least until those mods get updated. So that's something to keep in mind that I think people might not have thought of, I suppose, is, again, for games that are regularly seeing updates, using mods can actually cost me work at the expense of maybe giving me a better experience. So that's just something that I, as someone who does this as a living, has to weigh. But while those are pretty much the reasons I personally don't use mods, at least not in any significant capacity, I do want to end on a thankful note for the people that make them. Honestly, I think anybody that is putting in that amount of work for free for the most part, just so people might enjoy a game a little more, really deserves some praise, especially if you love video games as much as I do. So even if, frankly, my job sometimes gets in the way of me using mods, outside of things that are explicitly helpful in some way, mods are nonetheless amazing, and I'm very glad they exist, as again, they just give a huge lifespan to games that otherwise would not get it. But all of that said, hope you enjoyed the video, hope you found it informative. If you want to know anything else, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But seriously, any questions you have, drop them below, I'll probably answer them. Usually later in the day, as you might imagine. Regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.